The afternoon sun was too bright for a workday. Cars moved slow at the village roadside, dust floating in the air. On the shoulder of the road, a little folding table held 3 baskets of grapes. A man with a limp sat on a plastic stool nearby, wiping sweat from his forehead. His daughter, maybe 7 years old, stood proudly behind the table. Her name was Nina. She cupped a bunch of grapes in both hands as a black luxury car rolled to a stop. The back window slid down. "Hey, pull over," a well-dressed man in the back seat said. "My son loves grapes. Go buy some." "Yes, Mr. Lee," the driver answered quickly. The passenger in the front seat climbed out. Gold watch, neat suit, impatient eyes. He walked up to the little stall, already frowning. "Uncle, our grapes are really sweet," Nina said, holding up the bunch. "My dad grew them himself." He glanced at her, then at the fruit like it annoyed him. "There's dust all over these," he snapped. "You expect people to eat this? What if someone gets sick?" Nina's smile trembled. "They're clean, sir. We just picked them this morning. I can wipe them for you." He pushed her hand away and grabbed a bunch. Then he started squeezing the grapes hard, one by one, crushing some of them. "Sir, please don't squeeze them like that," Nina blurted. "My dad worked really hard to grow them. How am I supposed to know if they're good or bad if I don't touch them?" he sneered. "What, you trying to sell me rotten grapes?" Her father shifted on the stool, pain shooting up his injured leg, but he didn't speak. The man's irritation turned into anger. "You little brat," he said, voice rising. "You won't let me check? Your dad must be no good either, raising a liar like you." From the back seat of the car, the man in the suit, Mr. Lee, a powerful CEO, looked up, annoyed by the noise. "What's taking so long?" he muttered. The driver hurried over. "Mr. Lee, this little girl is trying to sell us bad fruit," the assistant said. Mr. Lee stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks. His eyes fell on Nina. "This child," he whispered. Why does she look so familiar?" Nina shrank back, clutching the crushed grapes, trying not to cry. The assistant shoved a few bunches into a bag. "Hurry up and give our boss 2 decent ones," he barked. As he yanked the bag off the table, Nina's small hand slipped, and the corner of the plastic scraped across Mr. Lee's shirt sleeve and across the silver bracelet on his wrist. A bracelet shaped like a tiny butterfly. It smeared with grape juice. Mr. Lee stared at it, and his face changed. "This bracelet," he said slowly. "Do you know what this is to me?" The grape juice streaked purple across the silver butterfly on Mr. Lee's wrist. For a second, everything went quiet. Even the car seemed to stop. Nina stared at the stain, her lips shaking. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean..." The assistant reacted first. "Are you blind?" he snapped. "Do you know what you just touched? This is our CEO's personal bracelet. You can't afford to break it even in your next life." He grabbed a napkin and started wiping the metal angrily, making it worse. Nina's father struggled to stand up, leaning hard on his bad leg. "Sir, I'm really sorry," he said, voice low. "She's just a child. I'll wipe it for you, or I'll pay for cleaning. Please don't." Mr. Lee pulled his hand back. "No need," he said sharply. But his eyes never left Nina. That butterfly. It was the only thing left from his own little girl, the one who disappeared years ago in a messy divorce and an uglier argument with his ex-wife's family. It was supposed to be a birthday gift. He'd kept it on his wrist ever since. Now it was smeared, and somehow that tiny stain hit something raw inside him. "How can you be so careless?" he snapped at Nina's dad. "Letting a child handle customers like this. Do you know how important this bracelet is?" Nina swallowed hard. "Uncle, I can clean it," she whispered. "I'm really careful, I promise." The assistant snorted. "Careful? You wouldn't even let me check the fruit." Selling dusty grapes on the side of the road and still acting righteous. He shoved Nina's small shoulder as he turned away. It wasn't hard, but her body wobbled more than it should have. Her knees gave out. She hit the ground. "Nina!" Her dad nearly fell trying to catch her. Mr. Lee flinched. "Hey, what are you doing?" "She's just a kid." The assistant froze, realizing he'd gone too far in front of his boss. She was in the way." Nina pushed herself up slowly, breathing fast, face pale. "I'm okay, Dad," she whispered. "Really. My legs just feel a little weak." Her dad's hand shook as he brushed dirt from her dress. "You haven't eaten since morning," he said softly. "Of course you're weak." Mr. Lee's gaze lingered. There was something off. The dark circles under her eyes, the way she held her chest as she breathed. It bothered him, more than he wanted to admit. "Forget it," he muttered, snapping his fingers at the assistant. "Pay them for the grapes." The assistant counted a few bills, tossed them on the table, grabbed 2 bunches, and hurried back to the car. Mr. Lee turned away, but not before giving Nina one last, strange, searching look. Then the car door closed. The black sedan rolled off, leaving dust and silence. That night, at the tiny village clinic, Nina sat on a hard wooden chair, feet dangling. Her father stood beside her as the doctor looked over a thin stack of test results, frowning deeper with every line he read. Sir, the doctor finally said, voice serious, your daughter's condition, it doesn't look simple. Nina swung her legs, trying to smile. Dad, I'm fine. I just get tired sometimes. The doctor looked up. She needs to go to a big hospital in the city, he said. Soon. Her blood levels are all wrong. It might be a blood disease. Nina's father felt his throat close. How bad? He whispered. The doctor hesitated. If we don't check it properly, he said quietly, you might lose her. The clinic lights flickered overhead, buzzing like tired bees. Nina sat on the exam table, swinging her legs, trying to pretend nothing was wrong. Her dad, Kai, stood frozen in front of the doctor. His calloused hands shook so badly he had to hide them behind his back. What do you mean I might lose her? He whispered, voice cracking. The doctor sighed, removing his glasses. Her blood counts are dangerously low. I can't confirm the exact condition here. We don't have the equipment. But it's serious. She needs a full workup in the city hospital. Immediately. Kai's chest tightened. The city meant money he didn't have. Nina tugged gently at his sleeve. Dad, why do you look so scared? He forced a smile. I'm not scared, sweetheart. Just thinking. Nina leaned her head on his arm. I'll be okay, she whispered. I'm strong. That only made his heart sink deeper. They left the clinic and stepped into the cool night. Most of the village had already gone dark. A stray dog barked somewhere far off. Kai lifted Nina onto his old bike, the one he patched together from 3 others. Hold tight, he said. She wrapped her small arms around his waist. He pedaled, hard. Every push sent pain shooting up his bad leg, but he ignored it. The road to the city was long, too long, but tonight it didn't matter. He would carry her if he had to. Halfway down the road, Nina rested her cheek against his back. Dad, are we going to find Mommy in the city? The question hit like a punch. He swallowed. Yes, he said softly. Mommy's there. Will she like me? Nina asked, voice fading. I don't remember her much. Kai couldn't speak for a moment. She'll love you, he finally said, more than anything. But his eyes stung, because he didn't know if it was true. Because the woman he once loved had left without looking back. And because he was terrified Nina wouldn't live long enough to know her at all. The city lights finally appeared ahead, bright, blurry dots in the distance. Nina, he whispered, we're almost there. But she didn't answer. Her arms around his waist loosened. Nina? He said quickly. Still nothing. He braked hard, the bike skidding on gravel. He turned around, and his heart stopped. Nina's eyes were half closed, her breathing shallow. He lifted her into his arms, panic rising. Nina! Hey, stay awake, he pleaded. Didn't you want to see the city? Didn't you want to find Mommy? Her eyelids fluttered. I'm sleepy, she murmured. Dad, can I rest? No. No, baby, stay with me. He gathered her close, running, limping, stumbling toward the hospital sign glowing down the street. Please, he whispered into her hair. Just hold on a little longer. Dad's here. Dad's right here. He didn't see the dark SUV parked across the road. He didn't see the man inside, watching with a clenched jaw. Watching Nina as if recognizing something he'd never expected to see again. The automatic doors of the city hospital slid open with a cold hiss as Kai stumbled inside, carrying Nina in both arms. His breath came in short bursts, his bad leg barely holding him up, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Somebody help! He shouted, voice cracking. My daughter, she fainted. A nurse rushed over with a small teen pushing a gurney. Sir, lay her down, quickly. Kai lowered Nina carefully, her head lolled to the side, lips pale, breathing thin like it was trying too hard. Sweetheart, Kai whispered. Nina, open your eyes. The nurse checked her vitals and frowned. She's burning up. How long has she been like this? Just now on the road, she fell asleep. His words spilled out fast, scared. She's tired a lot lately. The village doctor said something might be wrong with her blood. The nurse nodded to another staff member. Get her to pediatrics now. As they wheeled Nina down the hall, Kai limped after them, grabbing the railing with one hand, dragging his leg with the other. Every few steps, he whispered her name like a prayer. Nina, don't sleep. Dad's right here. The hallways were too white, too bright, too empty. Every echo of footsteps sounded like bad news. Inside the exam room, the doctor scanned the village test results, his expression darkening. These readings, he murmured, they're not good. Kai stood by the doorframe, hands clenched so tight his nails cut into his skin. What does she need, he asked. A medicine? A shot? Anything. I'll find a way to pay. Just tell me. We need to run better tests, but it appears to be a form of blood cancer. It's not confirmed yet, but the signs are strong. The room tilted. The floor felt like it vanished beneath Kai's feet. No, his voice broke. No, she's just a kid. She hasn't lived anything yet. I understand, the doctor said gently. But if this is leukemia, she'll need immediate treatment. Strong treatment. How much? Kai whispered. The doctor hesitated, then wrote a number on a clipboard and handed it to him. Kai stared at it. It might as well have been a mountain, a number he could never reach even if he worked every day for the rest of his life. Nina stirred weakly on the bed. Her fingers twitched, reaching toward the air, toward him. He rushed to her side. I'm here, baby, he whispered, brushing hair from her forehead. Dad isn't going anywhere. Nina blinked tiredly, her voice faint. Dad, did we make it to the city? Kai forced a smile, though tears choked him. Yeah, he whispered. We made it. You're safe. You just need a little help to get stronger. She nodded slowly. Will Mommy find us here? He swallowed hard. Yes, he said softly. She will. But as Nina drifted off again, Kai's eyes filled with a different fear, one he didn't dare speak out loud. Would she survive long enough to meet her mother at all? Out in the hospital parking lot, the dark SUV door opened quietly. Mr. Lee stepped out, staring at the hospital entrance. He had followed them. He didn't even understand why. But something in his chest told him the girl from the roadside wasn't just a stranger. She was a thread tied to a past he thought he'd lost forever. The fluorescent lights in the children's ward hummed softly, casting long shadows across the pale floor. Kai sat on a bench outside Nina's room, his hands clasped together so tightly the knuckles had turned white. He looked drained, like someone who'd been running for days without food or sleep. Every time the door swung open, he jerked his head up, afraid it was bad news. Inside the room, Nina slept, hooked up to machines far too big for her tiny body. Her chest rose and fell in small, uneven breaths. Kai wiped his face roughly, like he hoped the fear could be rubbed away. Does she have insurance? Mr. Lee asked. Kai shook his head slowly. We can't afford it. I came straight here. I thought I could figure something out. Mr. Lee's eyes hardened. And the tests, the treatments, they cost too much, Kai whispered. But I'll find a way. I'll sell everything. He stopped talking because his voice cracked. Mr. Lee studied him. This man, limping, exhausted, desperate, was refusing to break even though life kept hitting him from every angle. It tugged at something hidden deep inside Mr. Lee, a memory, a woman's voice, a little girl smiling, a promise he didn't keep. He cleared his throat abruptly, trying to shove the feeling away. Look, Mr. Lee said, if she needs treatment, she should get it. Right away. Kai lifted his eyes, confused, hopeful, afraid to believe. What are you saying? I'm saying... Mr. Lee paused, jaw tightening. I'll cover the cost of her initial tests. Kai stared at him, stunned. Why? He whispered. You don't even know us. Mr. Lee didn't answer. Because he didn't know the truth himself. He only knew one thing. Something about that little girl felt like fate pulling him by the collar, and he couldn't walk away. The doctor's voice echoed softly in the hallway as he finished giving instructions to a nurse. The scent of disinfectant lingered in the air, sharp and cold. Inside Nina's room, monitors beeped steadily, a fragile rhythm that kept Kai grounded. He stood beside her bed, gently brushing her hair away from her forehead. Her skin felt too warm, her cheeks too pale. She looked small, too small for tubes and needles and big medical words. Kai swallowed hard and whispered, You're going to be okay, sweetheart. Dad's right here. Mr. Lee stepped inside quietly, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. His assistant stayed by the door, awkward and stiff. Kai tensed immediately. He wasn't used to strangers, especially wealthy ones, standing in a hospital room with him like they belonged there. Is she stable? Mr. Lee asked. Kai nodded slowly. For now. They're doing more tests. Mr. Lee approached the bed, stopping a few feet away. His eyes softened, just a flicker when he saw Nina sleeping. She looks fragile, he murmured, almost to himself. Kai clenched his jaw. She's stronger than she looks, he said quietly. She's had to be. Mr. Lee didn't respond right away. His gaze lingered on Nina's tiny hand, resting on the blanket, fingers curled lightly, the way his own daughter used to do at that age. He forced the memory down. It's strange, he said finally, seeing her like this. Kai's brows knit together. What do you mean? Mr. Lee hesitated. He almost said it. She reminds me of my daughter. But the word stuck in his throat. Instead, he cleared his voice. Just strange, he muttered. A nurse walked in with a clipboard. Sir, she said to Kai, we'll be needing payment for the next set of examinations. The deposit is required before we proceed. Kai's stomach twisted. How much? He asked. She told him. Kai felt the number like a blow to the chest. He reached for his wallet out of instinct, even though he knew it was empty but for a few wrinkled bills. Mr. Lee's voice cut in. I'll handle it. Both Kai and the nurse blinked. Sir, she asked, you'll be responsible for the deposit? Yes, Mr. Lee said firmly. Put it under my account. Kai stared at him, stunned. Why? He repeated softly. Why? Help us. Mr. Lee didn't look at him. I told you, he said. The girl needs treatment, but you don't owe us anything. Mr. Lee finally turned. His expression was sharp, almost offensive, as if he hated the question. You think I'm doing this out of pity? He snapped. Kai swallowed. I don't know what to think. Mr. Lee looked away toward the window. It's not pity, he said. Let's just say things happen for a reason. His voice dropped lower, and sometimes fate doesn't give second chances. Kai didn't understand, not yet, but the way Mr. Lee said those words, it wasn't the tone of a rich man doing charity. It was the tone of a father haunted by something he couldn't repair. As the nurse left, Kai sank into a chair, still shaken. Thank you, he whispered, voice thick. I don't know how to repay. Don't repay anything, Mr. Lee cut in. Focus on your daughter. He stepped toward the door but paused before leaving. I'll check in again tomorrow, Kai nodded slowly. When Mr. Lee walked out, his assistant followed him down the hall, whispering urgently, Sir, why are we getting involved with these people? You've never. Mr. Lee stopped walking. His voice was quiet, tired. Because something isn't adding up, he said. That girl, she looks like. He stopped himself. Never mind. He continued down the hall, but his assistant had seen the look in his eyes. Something old had been stirred, something painful, and something told him this was only the beginning. Morning arrived gray and cold, slipping through the hospital windows like a tired sigh. Kai hadn't slept. His head leaned against the wall, but his eyes stayed on Nina's room door the entire night. Every shuffle of nurses down the hall made him sit up. Every beep from the monitor made his heart skip. Inside, Nina slept restlessly, mumbling words Kai couldn't hear. He wished he could take every ounce of her pain and carry it himself. He would have done it without a second thought. Across the waiting room, Mr. Lee sat in a corner chair, hands clasped, staring down at the floor. He hadn't slept either. He had told his assistant to go home, but the man stayed, half dozing in the chair beside him. Mr. Lee raked a hand through his hair. Why was he still here? Why couldn't he walk away from a little girl he'd met for barely a minute? Because she looked like someone he once held in his arms every night. Someone he lost in a blur of lawyers, arguments, and regrets that still tasted bitter. He didn't want to remember her face, but Nina's face made forgetting impossible. The doctor will speak with you and the child's father shortly. He nodded stiffly. Kai joined him near the consultation room door, limping slightly. He avoided eye contact. I don't know how to thank you, Kai murmured. You paid for everything. All the tests, the scans, the nurses said you even covered her medication. Mr. Lee stared straight ahead. You already thanked me, he said. Focus on your daughter. Kai nodded, but he couldn't stop studying the man beside him. This man was polished, wealthy, intimidating, yet something about him felt fractured, like he was carrying a wound he didn't talk about. Why do you care so much? Kai blurted quietly. Mr. Lee stiffened. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Before he could answer, the doctor stepped out, holding a thick folder of reports. Both men straightened. Mr. Kai, the doctor said gently, and Mr. Lee, correct? Please come in. Inside the small consultation room, the doctor placed the papers on the table. The tests confirm our suspicion, he said, voice steady but serious. Your daughter has acute leukemia. It's progressed faster than we expected. Kai felt the walls closing in. He forced out a whisper. What do we do now? She needs aggressive treatment, the doctor said. Soon. The good news is that with the right care, children her age can recover well. Kai nodded, tears filling his eyes. The doctor continued. But the treatment is long-term, expensive. Even with help, it will be difficult. Kai's breath caught, his throat tightened. Mr. Lee spoke before he could. We'll handle it. Kai turned sharply. What? No, you've already done too much. Mr. Lee didn't even look at him. I said I'll handle it. The doctor blinked, taken aback. Kai shook his head, overwhelmed. You can't just throw money at us, Kai said, voice trembling. Why? Why are you? Mr. Lee snapped, voice suddenly sharp. Because I lost one daughter already. I'm not losing another. Silence slammed into the room. Kai stared at him, stunned. Mr. Lee realized what he'd said. His chest rose and fell, the truth hanging between them like a wound exposed to air. He stepped back, gripping the edge of the counter. Forget it. But Kai didn't forget. He couldn't. For the first time, he saw the man not as a CEO, but as a father carrying grief heavy enough to crush him. And in that quiet, trembling moment, Kai understood something. Nina wasn't the only one who might need saving. The doctor left them alone in the consultation room, papers spread across the desk like cold reminders of everything that was now at stake. Kai sat heavily in the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. His body shook, but he refused to cry too loudly. Nina might hear from the next room. Mr. Lee stood by the window, staring at the blurred city skyline. His shoulders were tense, as if holding up more weight than the glass pane behind him. He wished he could take the words back. but they had slipped out before he could stop them. I lost one daughter already. He hadn't said those words out loud in years, not even to himself. Kai lifted his head, his voice hoarse. You lost a daughter. How? Mr. Lee kept staring outside, jaw clenched. It's complicated, he muttered. Kai didn't push, not at first. But silence in that small room felt too heavy, too wrong. He tried again, gently. Was she young, like Nina? Mr. Lee breathed in sharply, then let it out slow. She was 5, he said quietly. Her name was May. I gave her a small butterfly bracelet for her birthday. Kai froze. Mr. Lee didn't notice. He was somewhere else now, lost in a memory. Her mother took her after the divorce, he continued. I tried to fight for custody, but her family was powerful. They hid her from me, blocked every attempt. I never saw her again. He swallowed, his voice cracking in a way he couldn't hide. I don't even know if she's alive. Kai blinked, stunned. His heart pounded. A butterfly bracelet. A missing girl. A mother who left. The coincidences piled up too neatly, too painfully. Kai opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't say it. Not yet. Not until he was sure. A nurse knocked lightly on the door. Sir? Mr. Kai? She's awake now. She's asking for her father. Kai rushed out immediately. Mr. Lee followed, slower, unsure if he had the right to go near her, yet unable to stay away. They entered Nina's room. The little girl looked small under the white sheets, but her eyes were open now, bright and tired. Dad, she whispered, trying to smile. Kai sat beside her, kissing her forehead. I'm right here, sweetheart. Nina's gaze shifted to Mr. Lee, who hovered awkwardly near the doorway. Her eyes softened. You're the great man, she said weakly. Kai almost choked on a laugh sob. Mr. Lee's face tightened, then softened in spite of himself. Yes, he said quietly. I suppose I am. Nina stared at him for a long moment. Then she pointed to his wrist. You still have the butterfly, she whispered. It looks like mine. Mr. Lee froze. The world seemed to tilt. Kai's breath caught. Nina reached under her pillow with trembling fingers and pulled out a tiny cloth butterfly, handmade and worn at the edges. This was Mommy's, she said softly. She gave it to me before she left. Mr. Lee's heart slammed against his ribs. What? What did you just say? He whispered. Nina blinked at him. My mom made 2, she murmured. She said one was for me and one was for someone she loved a long time ago who didn't get to say goodbye. Kai flinched. Mr. Lee's face drained of color. Your mother, he whispered. What's her name? But before Kai could answer, before the truth could spill open and change everything, Nina's monitor beeped sharply. Her body tensed. Her breath turned shallow again. And Nina? Kai gasped, grabbing her hand. Nurses rushed in. Sir, step back. She's crashing. Mr. Lee stumbled backward as Kai cried out, No, Nina, stay with me. Stay with Dad. Doctors pushed in, calling out orders. Mr. Lee watched helplessly, heart pounding, stomach twisting, and in that terrifying chaos, one thought hit him like lightning. What if this little girl wasn't just a stranger? What if fate had dragged him here because Nina wasn't just Kai's daughter, but his? He didn't know the truth yet, but he was about to. Alarms rang through the pediatric room, sharp and frantic, cutting through the hallway like knives. Kai's whole world blurred into sound. Monitor beeps, nurses shouting orders, the scrape of medical carts being pulled in. Nina, he yelled, forcing himself to stay close even as a nurse guided him back. Baby, open your eyes! Her tiny body trembled on the bed. Her fingers twitched once, then went still. Blood pressure dropping. Prepare oxygen. Call Dr. Hunt now. Kai clung to the bed railing, knuckles white, tears falling freely now. He didn't care who saw. He didn't care how broken he looked. All he cared about was the girl fighting on that mattress. Mr. Lee stood frozen just inside the doorway, his breath stuck in his chest. He'd seen many things in his life, business failures, betrayals, even deaths in the family. But nothing felt like this. This felt like watching a piece of his soul slip out of reach. Nina's small chest rose in uneven, fragile jerks. Her lashes fluttered, as if she wanted to open her eyes but didn't have the strength. She needs stabilizing now, someone shouted. A nurse rushed forward with a syringe of medication. Kai pressed a shaking hand to his mouth. Please, he whispered. Please don't take my little girl. She's all I have. Please. Mr. Lee's throat tightened. He gripped the doorframe so hard his fingers ached. He couldn't look away. He couldn't breathe. Because deep inside, something screamed, don't let her die. Not again. Not her. After what felt like forever but was barely 4 minutes, the alarm softened. Vitals improving. The doctor exhaled, wiping his forehead. Her body just couldn't handle the stress. She's stable again, for now. Kai collapsed into the nearest chair, sobbing in relief. Thank you, thank you, thank you, nurses slowly filtered out. The doctor approached Kai gently. She's not out of danger, he warned. Her condition is progressing faster than expected. We need to move her to the specialty ward and begin treatment immediately. Kai nodded, wiping his eyes. He'd do anything, sell his home, his tools, his own health if he had to. He looked up. Mr. Lee was still standing there, staring at Nina like she was the only thing in the room. Kai took a shaky breath. "Sir," he whispered, voice raw. "Earlier you asked about her mother's name." Mr. Lee's gaze snapped to him. Kai swallowed, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. Her name was Lian. Mr. Lee staggered a half step. The air punched from his lungs. That name, that single name, was enough to unravel him. He hadn't heard it in years, had tried to forget it. But hearing it now felt like the universe dropping a truth onto his shoulders. He stared at Kai, at Nina, at the cloth butterfly on her blanket. "No," he breathed. "It can't be." Kai didn't look away. "Mr. Lee, I think you already know." Mr. Lee stepped closer to Nina's bed, his hand trembling as he reached toward her, but didn't touch, afraid he might break her. "She looks just like her," he whispered, voice shattering. "Like May, like the daughter I lost." Kai nodded slowly, painfully. "Because she's your daughter." The room went silent. No alarms, no voices, just one truth rising. A truth heavy enough to pull all three lives into a new storm. The room felt suddenly too small, too bright, too quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Mr. Lee stared at Kai, unable to move, unable to speak. The world he knew, structured, controlled, cold tilted sharply beneath him. She's my daughter!" His voice barely left his throat. Kai nodded once, slowly. "Yes." Mr. Lee shook his head, eyes wide, disbelief fighting with something deeper: fear, hope, regret. "But Leanne and she left years ago. Her family took everything. I searched for them. I hired investigators." His voice cracked. "They told me she moved overseas, that my daughter was gone." Kai looked down, hands tightening into fists. "That's because her family didn't want you to find her. Leanne told me everything the night she ended up in our village. She was terrified of your family, terrified of what they'd do if she tried to take the child back to you." Mr. Lee swallowed hard, chest rising and falling fast. "And she gave birth to Nina in your home?" Kai shook his head sharply. "No, she came to our village after the birth. Nina was already a few months old." "Then you're not. I'm not her biological father." The truth hung heavy, but Kai's voice held no resentment. He looked at Nina through the glass panel, eyes red but steady. "But I raised her," he continued. "Held her when she was sick, worked day and night so she could eat. I taught her to ride a bike, to draw, to laugh even when life hurt." He took a shaky breath. "She calls me Dad. And I won't ever stop being that." Mr. Lee looked down at his own hands, hands that once tied a butterfly bracelet onto a tiny wrist, hands that never got to hold that little girl again. He whispered, "I didn't know she existed." "I believe you," Kai said quietly. "Lion never stopped loving you. She died with your name on her lips." Mr. Lee stumbled back like the words had struck him. His throat tightened painfully. "She's gone?" Barely a whisper. Kai nodded. "She passed 3 years ago. A fever that turned into pneumonia. We couldn't save her." Mr. Lee leaned on the wall, eyes filling. He didn't try to hide the tears. For once, he didn't have the strength. "That day," Kai continued softly, "she gave me the cloth butterfly. She said one day Nina might need it, to find the person it belonged to." Mr. Lee covered his mouth, trying not to break. It didn't work. Years of grief poured out, hot and uncontrollable. Kai let him cry. He knew that kind of pain. After a long moment, Mr. Lee straightened, wiping his face. His eyes shifted to Nina, still weak, still fighting. "Does she know?" he asked. Kai shook his head. "I didn't tell her. I didn't want to confuse her. I didn't want her to feel abandoned." Mr. Lee stepped forward slowly, almost cautiously, like he was approaching something holy. "May I?" he whispered. Kai nodded. Mr. Lee placed his hand gently on the glass panel separating them from the ICU room, fingers trembling, his heart squeezed painfully at the sight of her. "My daughter," he breathed. "My little girl." And in that moment, fragile, trembling, overwhelming, a wealthy man with everything and a poor man with nothing stood side by side, both fathers to the same child. A low hum filled the hallway outside the ICU, the kind of sterile quiet that made every heartbeat feel louder, every breath heavier. Kai stood beside Mr. Lee, watching him press trembling fingers to the glass. For the first time, the man looked nothing like a CEO. No confidence, no armor, just a father meeting the truth he'd searched for in nightmares and empty birthdays. Nina, hooked to monitors, slept with furrowed brows, like even dreams took effort. Kai cleared his throat softly. "I didn't tell her because I didn't think it was my place." He paused. "And because part of me was scared you'd take her away the second you knew." Mr. Lee slowly lowered his hand from the glass. "Would you have fought me?" he asked quietly. Kai blinked, surprised by the gentleness in the question. "Honestly," he murmured, "if you came years ago, yes. Mr. Lee nodded once, accepting the answer without offense. But now, Kai continued, voice cracking, now I just want her to live long enough to choose for herself. Those words hung in the still air. A nurse approached with an update sheet. She's stable for now, she said softly, but her body won't hold out much longer without treatment. Then start it, Mr. Lee said immediately. The nurse hesitated. There's a cost estimate. Give it to him, Mr. Lee said, nodding toward Kai. The nurse handed over a sheet, 3 pages of numbers that made Kai's stomach drop. He didn't need to read it to know he could never afford it. Not in this lifetime, not in 10. Kai's hands trembled as he held the papers. She needs this, the nurse said with a sympathetic look. Every hour counts. Kai pressed the papers against his forehead, shaking. I can't, he whispered. I'll never be able to. I will, Mr. Lee said. Kai looked up sharply. No, you don't understand the cost. I said I will. Kai shook his head, overwhelmed. It's too much. This isn't something you just pay for out of guilt or pity. Mr. Lee stepped closer, his eyes steady, burning with something deeper than obligation. This isn't guilt, and it's not pity. He took a breath. She's my daughter, Kai. I failed her once. I'm not failing her again. Kai looked down, throat tight. I don't want her to lose the only father she remembers, he said softly. Mr. Lee's features softened, surprising even himself. She won't, he said. She doesn't have to lose either of us. Kai looked up slowly. What are you saying? I'm saying, Mr. Lee shrugged helplessly, shaking his head at how surreal the words felt. Maybe she deserves 2 fathers. Life has already taken so much from her. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, not strained, just 2 men absorbing the enormity of what had changed between them. A sudden commotion came from down the hall. A woman in a suit, sharp-eyed, brisk, clearly impatient, stormed toward them with 2 assistants. CEO, Lee, why haven't you answered any calls? We have an urgent board meeting. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Nina through the glass, and Kai beside him. Her eyes narrowed. Who are these people? She asked coldly. Mr. Lee didn't look away from Nina. Their family. The woman blinked, thrown off by the firm tone. Sir, the board can wait, he said. Sir, your legitimate son is at home waiting for you. You can't just... Mr. Lee turned, eyes sharp as steel. Watch your words, she swallowed, straightening. I'm only saying this girl. She is not part of our family, and your priorities. Mr. Lee's voice cut in, low and deadly calm. She is my daughter. The woman froze. Kai's breath caught. Even the hallway seemed to still. Mr. Lee finished quietly. From this moment on, treat her with the same respect you'd give my son, or don't come near me at all. His staff exchanged shocked looks. Kai stared at him in disbelief, and Nina, tiny, fragile Nina, shifted in her sleep, unaware that her world had just changed forever. 2 fathers stood guard outside her door, one who raised her, one who lost her, and both who were ready to fight the world for her now. Later that afternoon, after the confrontation with Mr. Lee's staff, the hallway quieted again. Nurses passed occasionally, pushing carts or checking charts, but the chaos had settled into a strange calm. Inside the ICU room, Nina lay sleeping, small, fragile, yet somehow still full of presence. I sat at her bedside, holding her hand gently, tracing tiny circles on her palm the way he used to when she was a toddler. It always soothed her. Mr. Lee stood near the foot of the bed, watching every rise and fall of her chest like it were the most important thing on earth. He couldn't look at her without seeing the past, the little girl who had been stolen from him, the birthday bracelet he'd carried like a wound, the empty room that once belonged to his daughter. And now, here she was, a miracle wrapped in tubes and monitors. Nina stirred. Her eyelids fluttered weakly. She turned her head slightly toward the warm pressure of Kai's hand. Dad, she whispered. Kai leaned in immediately. I'm here, sweetheart. Her breathing was shallow, her voice barely a thread. Dad, did you eat today? Kai let out an emotional huff of a laugh. You don't worry about me. You worry about getting stronger, okay? She smiled faintly, then coughed. Mr. Lee tensed, ready to call a nurse, but Nina blinked until she could focus on him. Oh, great man, she whispered. Mr. Lee let out a shaky breath, half laugh, half sob. Yes, he murmured, stepping closer. It's me. Nina blinked slowly, studying his face. Something familiar flickered in her expression, like she was trying to fit a puzzle piece somewhere. I saw you in a dream, she said softly. Kai stiffened. Mr. Lee leaned forward slightly. A dream? Nina nodded. You had the same eyes as mine. Kai looked at Mr. Lee, holding back his own emotions. Nina lifted a trembling hand toward the small table beside her bed. My crayons, she whispered. Kai quickly reached for the worn little box. Nina always kept them close, drawing to calm herself. She pulled out a single crayon blue, her favorite, and a piece of paper from under her blanket. Her movements were slow, weak, but she was determined. Mr. Lee stepped closer. What are you drawing? He asked gently. Nina pressed the crayon down and began to draw slow, wobbly lines. A circle, Another circle, two little dots, a curve, a face. Then she added a butterfly, small, simple, familiar. When she finished, the drawing had two figures, one with Kai's messy hair. One with Kai's messy hair. No. The other with Mr. Lee's sharper features, and Nina between them, holding both their hands. Underneath, in uneven letters, she wrote, "My dad's," with a butterfly beside the word. The room went painfully quiet. Kai's eyes filled immediately. Mr. Lee covered his mouth, breathing shaking apart. Nina looked up at them, smiling barely. I had a dream," she whispered. "A dream that I had two dads. One who raised me, and one I've been waiting for." Mr. Lee's knees weakened. He had to steady himself on the foot of the bed. Kai looked at Nina, voice trembling. "Sweetheart, why did you think that?" Nina blinked slowly. Because Mommy said someone would come find me, someone who loved butterflies." She turned her gaze to Mr. Lee. "Are you him?" The question pierced the air, gentle, fragile, hopeful. Mr. Lee tried to speak, but his throat closed. Kai placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. "You can tell her," he whispered. "She deserves to know." Mr. Lee knelt down beside the bed, taking Nina's tiny hand carefully, like it might crumble if he held too tight. His voice cracked open completely. "Nina, yes. A breath. A trembling smile. I'm your dad. Your real dad." Nina didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She just smiled in a way that made both men lose their breath. "I knew," she whispered. "My heart told me." Her eyelids fluttered again. "Dad Kai, Dad Lee, will you both stay with me?" Both men answered at the same time. "Always." Nina exhaled softly, comforted. She closed her eyes, drifting back to sleep with a tiny smile, and her drawing still resting on the blanket between them, a butterfly. Two fathers, one fragile little girl at the center of everything, and for the first time in years, both men felt something spark inside them, hope. Evening shadows stretched long across the hospital floor as the sun dipped behind the glass towers outside. Inside Nina's room, the machine beep settled into a steadier rhythm, still fragile, but no longer panicked. Kai and Mr. Lee sat on opposite sides of her bed, the drawing resting gently on the blanket between them like a quiet promise neither man dared disturb. Nina slept peacefully now, her breathing soft and even. Every few minutes, she squeezed one of their hands in her sleep, sometimes Kai's, sometimes Mr. Lee's, as if her little heart was making room for both without hesitation. Kai finally broke the silence. "She accepted it fast," he whispered. "Faster than I expected." Mr. Lee's eyes softened. "Children know things we adults are too scared to see," he murmured. She felt it before we ever told her," Kai nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. "Yeah," he said. "She always had this way of understanding people, even when she didn't know their stories." Mr. Lee glanced at him. "And you," he added quietly. "She looks at you like your whole world." Kai swallowed. "I am," he said, "or I was, until today." Mr. Lee shook his head immediately. "You still are," he insisted. "Nothing changes that." Kai didn't answer right away. He looked down at Nina, brushing his thumb over her hand. "I'm not losing her," he whispered. "Not after everything. I can't." "You won't," Mr. Lee said firmly. "Not while I'm here." A soft knock came from the door. The doctor entered with a clipboard, expression serious but not grim. "Mr. Kai, Mr. Lee, I have the updated treatment plan." Both men straightened, bracing themselves. The doctor cleared his throat. "For Nina to have a real chance, we need to start her on a more aggressive cycle. Chemotherapy, transfusions, and possibly a stem cell transplant down the line." Kai exhaled shakily. "Do whatever she needs," he said instantly. The doctor hesitated. "There's more." He placed a page in front of them. "Her condition has advanced faster than expected. Her body's response isn't typical for a child her age. It suggests she may have been experiencing symptoms far longer than anyone realized." Kai froze. Mr. Lee frowned deeply. "What symptoms?" he asked. The doctor looked between them. "Fatigue, nosebleeds, leg pain, light bruising, fainting spells." Kai's face went pale. Mr. Lee's expression sharpened. "She fainted before?" he demanded. Kai lowered his head. "Yes," he admitted. "Twice this year, maybe more. But I thought she was just tired or hungry. Sometimes she'd get dizzy around midday. I figured she skipped breakfast to save food for me." Pain shot through his voice. "I didn't know she was sick. I didn't know she was dying right in front of me." Mr. Lee swallowed hard. "And you couldn't afford real checkups before now," he said quietly. Kai nodded, shame burning behind his eyes. The doctor continued gently. "We'll do everything we can, but her chances depend on quick action." Mr. Lee stood immediately. "We'll get her everything she needs." Kai looked up sharply. "We? We?" Mr. Lee nodded. "Yes, you and I. Together." Something in Kai's chest loosened, just slightly. But then the doctor added one last detail. "Her best hope is a compatible stem cell donor. A close biological relative is ideal. Mr. Lee straightened so fast his chair squeaked. I'll get tested, he said, immediately. The doctor nodded. We'll prepare the forms. Kai hesitated. Should I? Mr. Lee looked at him. Yes, he said. She's your daughter too, your family. Kai exhaled shakily. Then we both get tested. The doctor left. Silence settled in again, thick and full of weight. Kai stared at Nina's drawing. My dad's? His chest tightening. You know, he said, his voice low, I used to wonder why Leanne showed up in our village out of nowhere. Why she trusted me. She was scared, broken, but she loved that baby like her life depended on it. He looked at Mr. Lee. She must have known you'd come for her someday. She left pieces behind so you could find her. Mr. Lee blinked quickly, swallowing the burn in his eyes. I should never have let her go, he whispered. I should have fought harder, looked harder. I failed harder, I failed her, and Nina. Kai shook his head. No, you didn't know, and you're here now. He paused, voice cracking. She needs both of us. And she'll have both of us. No matter what happens, Nina stirred, eyes fluttering open. Dad Kai, Dad Lee, both men leaned forward instantly. We're right here, they said at the same time. Nina smiled weakly, the kind of smile that could break and heal a heart in the same second. My back hurts, she whispered. Kai stroked her hair gently. I know, sweetheart. The doctors are helping. Nina looked between them, breathing shaky. Promise you won't leave me? Kai squeezed her hand. Never. Mr. Lee's voice broke. Not even for a second. Nina sighed softly, closing her eyes again. And for the first time since the diagnosis, both fathers shared the same unspoken vow. Whatever the cost, whatever the sacrifice, they would save their little girl. The next morning came slowly, dripping into the ward like cold water. Light filtered through the blinds in thin lines, striping the floor and Nina's pale hands. She slept quietly, her breathing steady but fragile, the kind of fragile that made both Kai and Mr. Lee sit close, afraid to move too far away. A nurse stepped in softly. Mr. stepped in softly. Lee, Mr. Kai, the lab is ready for your donor tests. Kai stood first, rubbing his tired eyes. Mr. Lee rose too, straightening his coat even though he hadn't slept or left the hospital. They followed the nurse down a quiet hallway. Every step echoed. Neither man spoke at first. There were too many thoughts in the air. Finally, Kai broke the silence. If you're the match, he said slowly, then you'll be the one who saves her life. Mr. Lee didn't look at him. And if you're the match, he asked, voice low. Kai nodded, swallowing. Then I'll do whatever it takes. Mr. Lee glanced over. You don't worry that I might take her away? Kai shook his head. Maybe once I would have, he admitted. But now, all I care about is her staying alive. She can't lose either of us. Not now. Something softened in Mr. Lee's face. Something tired, grateful, quietly shaken. He nodded. You're a good man, Kai. Kai huffed a small laugh. I'm just a dad trying to keep his kid breathing. The nurse motioned them into the lab room. 2 chairs, 2 vials, 2 needles filling with possibilities. Kai did the same. The nurse worked efficiently. Results should be back in a few hours, she said gently. We'll notify you immediately. She left them alone in the small, quiet room. Kai looked down at the bandage on his arm. You know, he said softly, I used to think Nina would never know her real father. I thought maybe that was safer. Mr. Lee lowered his gaze. And now? Kai exhaled slowly. Now I see how she looks at you, how she recognizes you. She feels something. Kids don't fake that. Mr. Lee swallowed hard. My biggest fear, he whispered, is that when she grows up, she'll hate me for not finding her sooner. Kai shook his head. She won't, he said. You didn't choose to lose her, but you chose to find her now. Mr. Lee blinked rapidly, jaw tightening as he fought emotion. Thank you, he murmured. Kai nodded. As they walked back toward Nina's room, a sudden commotion erupted near the nurse's station. A woman's sharp voice cut through the air. Where is she? Where is the child touching our family's CEO? Both men turned. A group of people approached. Los Angeles office executives, expensive shoes, polished expressions. At the front was a heavily made-up woman in a pearl coat, eyes flashing with contempt. Kai stiffened instantly. Mr. Lee muttered under his breath, oh no. The woman marched straight up to them. Li Zhen, she snapped, ignoring Kai completely. We've been calling you for hours. What is this nonsense about you paying medical bills for some stranger? She's not a stranger. Kai stood slightly in front of the hallway, protective. The woman scoffed. Who is this child then? Some street girl? Do you know how this looks for the company? You can't just throw money away on. Mr. Lee cut her off sharply. She's my daughter. The woman froze. Silence rippled outward like a shockwave. His assistant, who had returned, nearly dropped the stack of papers he was holding. Kai stayed still, watching carefully. The woman blinked, face contorting. Your daughter? She whispered. But your son, your reputation, your entire… Enough, Mr. Lee said coldly. If you have a problem, take it to my office, not here. She stared at Kai with open disgust. And who exactly is this? She sneered. The mother? The caretaker? Or is this some con you've both planned? Kai flinched. Mr. Lee stepped between them instantly. Kai is Nina's adoptive father, he said firmly. He raised her. And you will treat him with respect. The woman stared at him, truly stared, as if she didn't recognize him anymore. You've changed, she whispered. You were never this reckless. Mr. Lee didn't blink. Maybe I spent too long being someone I hated. Before the woman could respond, a nurse hurried over. Mr. Lee, Mr. Kai, the ICU called. Nina is awake again. She's asking for you. Both men moved at the same time. The woman called after him. Jen, this is a mistake. She's not one of us. Mr. Lee turned back, eyes sharp as steel. She is mine. And that's the end of the conversation. He didn't wait for a reply. He walked beside Kai, fast and determined, heading toward Nina's room, where a little girl with two fathers was waiting, and where the next chapter of all their lives was just beginning. When Kai and Mr. Lee reached Nina's room, they found her sitting up in bed, propped by pillows, hair messy, eyes sleepy but shining in a way that stopped both men in their tracks. She looked small, fragile, but alive, and that alone felt like a miracle. Nina brightened when she saw them. Dad Kai, Dad Lee. Her voice was raspy but warm. You came back. Kai immediately went to her side, brushing a loose piece of hair behind her ear. Of course we did, he whispered. We'd never leave you. Mr. Lee stepped closer, slower, as if approaching something precious he was afraid to break. Nina held out her hand toward him without hesitation. He took it, carefully, reverently, and his entire face softened. You scared us, he said softly. You scared us both. Nina blinked innocently. I was just tired. Kai sighed shakily. Tired is okay, but fainting and beeping machines? Not okay, she giggled weakly. A nurse came in with a small tray of medications. Good morning, sweetheart, she said gently. We're giving you something to help with the pain, okay? Nina nodded but held tighter to both men's hands, one little hand wrapped around each father. Don't go, she murmured, please. We won't, Mr. Lee answered instantly, sitting beside her. We're right here. The nurse smiled softly and left them alone again. Nina tilted her head, studying them. Did you two talk? She asked. Kai raised an eyebrow. What makes you think that? She shrugged, wiggling her tiny shoulders. Because you weren't fighting, she whispered. Both men let out a breath, half laugh, half ache. No fighting, Kai promised. Not ever about you. Mr. Lee nodded. We only want what helps you get better. Nina smiled again, then grew quiet. Will I get better? She asked, barely above a whisper. Kai swallowed. Mr. Lee felt his chest tighten. Kai leaned closer. We're going to do everything we can. The doctors too, Mr. Lee added gently. It won't be easy, but you're not alone. You've got two dads now. Double the stubbornness. Nina giggled again, then coughed softly. When she settled, she looked at them with an expression too old for her little face. Oh, if I get better, she whispered. Can we all live together? Both men froze. Kai blinked. Caught off guard, Mr. Lee inhaled sharply. Live together? A family? The three of them? Nina waited, hopeful eyes drifting between them. Kai cleared his throat. We'll figure something out, he said carefully. Right now, we're all focused on making sure you're okay. But yes, he added, his voice trembling in a way he couldn't hide. If you want us near, we'll be near. Nina's face lit up, small but genuine. Then I'll get better fast, she whispered. Kai kissed her forehead. That's my girl. Mr. Lee reached out and placed a hand on top of both of theirs. Rest now, he murmured. We'll be here when you wake up. Nina finally relaxed, eyelids fluttering shut. As she drifted to sleep, still holding onto both their hands, Kai whispered, She chose us, you know. Mr. Lee nodded. No, he said softly, eyes full. She saved us. They sat there in silence. One man who raised her, one man who lost her, and the little girl who pulled their broken worlds into one room, breathing together, hoping together, fighting together. The next morning arrived with a cold bite in the air. Heavy clouds stacked over the city like warning signs. Nina slept soundly, curled on her side, one hand clutching the edge of her blanket the way she did whenever she felt safe. Kai sat at her bedside, sipping a cheap hospital vending machine coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. He didn't care. Every few seconds he glanced at Nina's monitor just to make sure the numbers hadn't dipped. Mr. Lee stood by the window, palm pressed to the cold glass. He watched cars move below Tiny, rushed, unaware that the world had shifted for him forever. He kept replaying the scene from the night before, Kai saying, She is your daughter. Nina asking, will you stay? And that drawing, my dad's, still taped to the wall beside her bed. It made something inside him settle. For the first time in years, he didn't feel hollow. The peace didn't last. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Raised voices, angry voices. Kai and Mr. Lee exchanged a look. Before either could move, the ICU door swung open and a group of sharply dressed men and women stormed in. Mr. Lee's extended relatives, high-ranking executives, and people who smelled like money and entitlement. At the front stood a tall man with slick silver hair and cold eyes, Mr. Lee's uncle. Zen, the uncle snapped. We need to talk, now! Kai instinctively moved closer to Nina. Mr. Lee stepped forward, jaw tight. This isn't the place. This is exactly the place, his uncle said. We heard the rumor. You claim some sick village girl is your daughter. Kai stiffened. Mr. Lee's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. She is my daughter. A murmur of outrage rippled through the group. One executive gasped. Another whispered, unacceptable. Another sneered openly at Kai's clothes. The uncle lifted his chin. You know the rules of our family. A child born outside the marriage? Mr. Lee cut him off. I don't care about your rules. His uncle's eyes narrowed. That girl, he said, pointing toward Nina, cannot be recognized. If you bring her into the Lee family, you will destroy everything we have built. Your son's reputation, your own name, the company. Enough, Mr. Lee snapped, voice slicing like ice. I won't let you talk about her like that. Kai stepped between them before things escalated. She's sleeping, he said quietly. Please lower your voices. The uncle looked Kai over with disgust. So this is the man who raised her, a crippled laborer from the countryside? Kai clenched his fists, but he didn't move. Mr. Lee stepped closer to his uncle. You insult him again, he said softly, and you'll regret it. The uncle laughed, a short, bitter sound. Oh, look at you, playing father to a child who isn't even worthy of our bloodline. Mr. Lee's face darkened. Kai spoke calmly but firmly. She may not be worthy to you, sir, he said, but she's worth everything to us. The uncle scoffed. This girl is a burden, and if you sink money into her treatment, we cannot stand by quietly. Mr. Lee's voice chilled. You think money matters more than her life? It must, the uncle hissed, for our future. Mr. Lee stepped forward slowly, deliberately, like a storm preparing to break. My daughter's future, he said, is worth more than every cent your company makes. Kai looked at him, and for the first time, truly saw a father, not a CEO. Not a wealthy man, not someone haunted by regret, just a father protecting his child. The uncle exhaled sharply. Then you leave us no choice. He turned to his lawyers. Prepare the paperwork. Effective immediately. If he goes through with this public claim, he is removed from all decision-making authority. Kai's heart lurched. Mr. Lee's fists tightened at his sides, but his eyes didn't waver. Do what you want, he said. I'm not abandoning her. The uncle shook his head. You're throwing your empire away for a dying child. Kai stiffened. Mr. Lee went cold. Get out, he whispered. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight. The uncle stepped forward, taunting. You'll risk losing everything for her? Everything? Mr. Lee looked at Nina, sleeping, fragile, unaware of the war outside her door. Then he said the words that changed the room. I lost her once already. His voice cracked. I won't lose her again. The room fell silent. Even the uncle stopped breathing for a moment. Because in that sentence was the truth, raw, unmistakable, and immovable. Kai's eyes filled, and for the first time, the uncle saw something in Mr. Lee he had never seen before. Conviction, love, and the kind of strength you can't buy. The uncle finally turned away. This is your final warning, he muttered. If you go down this path, you won't have a family to return to. Mr. Lee didn't blink. I already have one, he said, and he looked at Nina and at Kai, and the uncle understood nothing could break this bond now. The hallway outside Nina's room stayed thick with tension long after Mr. Lee's uncle and the others stormed off. Their footsteps echoed down the corridor, but their words, cold, cruel, lingered like a bruise in the air. Kai closed the door gently behind them, careful not to wake Nina. He leaned his back against it and exhaled a shaky breath. Mr. Lee stood near the window again, staring out with clenched fists. Not angry, not anymore, just heartbroken in a way that made him look older, more human than Kai had ever seen. Are you okay? Kai asked softly. Mr. Lee didn't turn. His voice came low and tired. I lost my daughter once because I listened to people like them. Their rules, their image, their control. He shook his head. I won't let them take her from me again. Kai nodded. That's good, he said, because Nina needs you. Not your money, not your company, just you. Mr. Lee finally looked over. And she needs you too, he said. You're the father she grew up with. The father she trusts. Kai swallowed hard. We're both here, he said. She doesn't have to choose. Mr. Lee nodded slowly. His expression softened, a mix of gratitude and quiet relief. Just then, a nurse approached quickly, holding a sealed envelope. Mr. Lee, Mr. Kai, the donor test results are back. Both men stiffened. Kai's heart jumped into his throat. Mr. Lee's breath hitched. The nurse handed the envelope to Kai first. You can open it together, she said gently. I'll give you privacy. She stepped back down the hall. Kai stared at the envelope, the thin paper suddenly feeling heavier than stone. His fingers trembled as he held it out. You open it, he said to Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee shook his head. You raised her. You should. Kai exhaled sharply, tension vibrating through him. He tore carefully along the top edge. 2 pages slid out. His eyes scanned the first line. His breath caught. Mr. Lee watched every tiny shift in his expression, unable to breathe. Finally, Kai looked up, eyes wide, voice stunned. She has a match. Mr. Lee stepped forward instantly. Who? Kai handed him the result. Mr. Lee unfolded the paper with shaking hands. When he saw the name, his entire world cracked open. Donor match, 98.7% compatible relative, Lee Zhen father. Mr. Lee covered his mouth as the breath left him. He sank into the chair behind him as if his legs couldn't hold him anymore. Kai placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. You're the match, Kai whispered. You can save her. Tears pooled in Mr. Lee's eyes, falling freely now. Not ashamed, not hidden. He breathed out a broken laugh. She's really mine, he whispered. All this time, she's really my daughter. Kai nodded, feeling a weight lift too. She is. Suddenly, a soft voice came from behind them. Why are you crying? They turned. Nina was awake. She sat propped against her pillows, blinking sleepily, a small smile tugging the corner of her lips, unaware she had just changed both men's lives forever. Kai rushed to her bedside. Oh, sweetheart! Mr. Lee joined him, wiping his tears quickly, trying to pull himself together. Nina reached out 2 small hands, one toward each father. You can't cry, she whispered. Not when I'm awake. Kai kissed her hand. We're crying because we love you, he said gently. Mr. Lee leaned closer. And because we got good news, he added. Nina tilted her head, curious. What news? Mr. Lee brushed a hand through her hair with a tenderness she instantly melted into. I'm a match, he whispered. I can help make you better. Nina blinked, processing it. Then, a tiny smile. A hopeful, trembling smile. So, I get to stay with both my dads? Kai and Mr. Lee looked at her, and each other, and something unspoken bound them tighter than any bloodline. Yes, Kai said. Yes, Mr. Lee echoed. Nina sighed in relief, small shoulders relaxing. Then I'll fight, she whispered, almost fierce despite her weak voice. I'll fight really hard. Kai felt his chest break open. Mr. Lee closed his eyes, steadying himself. And then Nina added softly, because now I have 2 hearts protecting me. Both men bowed their heads, unable to speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the strength of a little girl who shouldn't have had to be strong at all, but who was, and who now, finally, had a future worth fighting for. The next day moved like a quiet storm, slow on the outside, thunder on the inside. Nina was transferred from ICU to a monitored pediatric room where the air smelled less sterile and more hopeful. A small window let in soft sunlight. Her drawing, My Dad's, was taped beside her bed like a protective charm. Kai sat at her side, feeding her a spoonful of warm porridge the nurse brought. She wrinkled her nose after the first bite. It tastes like wet cardboard, she complained softly. Kai laughed through exhaustion. I know, sweetheart, but the doctor said you need the energy. Nina frowned dramatically, then opened her mouth for another spoonful. Mr. Lee stood nearby, watching her eat with a tenderness he couldn't hide if he tried. He wasn't used to this. Slowing down, watching someone breathe, caring about every blink, every expression. But Nina pulled that out of him effortlessly. A knock sounded on the door. A doctor stepped in holding a folder. Mr. Lee, Mr. Kai, we need to discuss the transplant preparation. Nina looked up instantly, worried. Kai stroked her hair gently. Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll be right outside. You rest, okay? Nina nodded but grabbed both their hands before letting them go. You promise you're not going far? Right outside, Mr. Lee said. We won't leave the hallway. Only then did she release them. Outside in the hall, the doctor spoke quietly. We'll run deeper compatibility tests today, he explained. If Mr. Lee's match holds at the confirmed level, he'll be the primary donor. Mr. Lee nodded firmly. Whatever she needs. Kai crossed his arms, trying to stay steady. What are the risks? He asked. For Nina, the doctor said, the transplant is her best chance, but her body is weak, and the chemotherapy will weaken it more. There's no guarantee, but without the transplant, she has no real path forward. Kai swallowed hard. And for the donor? He asked quietly. The doctor looked at Mr. Lee. For adults, the procedure is safe. Some soreness, fatigue, but nothing long-term. You'll recover quickly. Mr. Lee nodded without hesitation. Then I'll do it. Today. Now. Whatever you need. The doctor smiled slightly at his determination. We'll begin preoperative prep soon. He left them alone in the hallway. Kai exhaled shakily. You didn't even blink, he said. Not once. Mr. Lee shrugged. She's my daughter, he said simply. My blood is supposed to protect her. Kai looked down. I've been trying to protect her too, he whispered. But I couldn't save her from this. Mr. Lee turned to him sharply. Yes, you did, he said. You kept her alive long enough for us to get here. That matters more than you realize. Kai blinked, emotional. And you being the match, that's fate, isn't it? He said softly. Mr. Lee nodded. Feels like it. Just then, Nina's soft voice carried from the cracked door. Dad Kai, Dad Lee, both men rushed inside. Nina looked up at them with big eyes. Can I draw? She asked. Kai smiled. You can always draw. She reached for her crayons and a fresh page. Her movements were slower, but her focus was strong. She drew 3 small figures, one tall man, one limping man, one tiny girl in the middle holding a bright red heart. Above it, in shaky letters, she wrote, Please don't give up. Kai's chest tightened. Mr. Lee swallowed hard. Nina looked up at them, serious. This is us, she whispered. You two protect the heart, and I'll keep holding on. Kai brushed a tear away before it fell. Mr. Lee sat beside her. Nina, he said softly, do you know how brave you are? She shrugged, sleepy. I'm not brave, she murmured. I just want to go home with my dads. She leaned her head against her pillow. Dad Lee, are you scared? Mr. Lee froze. No one had asked him that since he was a child. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally answered honestly. Yes, he whispered. I'm very scared. Nina smiled faintly. Good, she said. Then we're matching inside too. Good, she said. Kai laughed wetly. Then Nina whispered, I'll be brave if you'll be brave. Both men nodded. We will, Kai said. We already are, Mr. Lee added. Nina closed her eyes peacefully, holding the new drawing to her chest. As she drifted to sleep again, both fathers stayed by her side. One on the left, one on the right, and between them, a little girl fighting harder than anyone her size ever should. Night settled slowly over the children's wing. The hallway lights dimmed to a soft glow. A nurse placed a small night lamp on Nina's bedside table, shaped like a tiny moon. Its warm yellow light washed gently over her sleeping face. Kai sat on one side of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at Nina's tiny fingers poking out of the blanket. He had held those hands through fevers, nightmares, storms, hunger. Now he held them through something far bigger. On the other side, Mr. Lee stood silently, one hand resting on the rail as if grounding himself by staying close. He'd taken the final compatibility tests. That afternoon, tomorrow, he would be Nina's donor. The weight of tomorrow pressed into both men, though neither spoke it aloud. Nina stirred, her lashes fluttering. She opened her eyes just enough to see them. Why are you both awake? She whispered. You look like tired pandas. Kai chuckled softly. Because we wanted to make sure you were okay. Nina gave a tiny smile. I'm okay with you here. She reached one hand toward Kai, the other toward Mr. Lee. They each took her hand instinctively. Nina looked between them, half awake. Dad, Kai, tell me a story. Kai blinked, surprised. A story? Right now? She nodded weakly. A short one, please. Kai smiled gently. Okay, sweetheart, but it'll be a quiet one. Once, there was a little girl who loved drawing butterflies. She didn't have much, but she had a kind heart, so people loved her anyway. One day, she met a man who walked with a limp, but his heart walked strong, stronger than anyone she knew, and he protected her with everything he had. Nina's lips curled into a tiny smile. Kai continued. Then one day, another man appeared in her life. He didn't know he was searching for her. But when he saw her, his heart recognized something he thought he'd lost forever. Nina blinked sleepily. That's me, right? Kai nodded, voice thickening. Yes, sweetheart, that's you. Mr. Lee swallowed hard, clearing his throat. And the 2 men? Nina murmured. Mr. Lee answered before Kai could. They became fathers, he said softly, not because they were perfect, but because they both loved the same little girl more than their own lives. Jaina relaxed deeper into her pillow. That's a good story, she whispered. Kai brushed her hair back. It's still being written, little one. Nina's voice shrank to a sleepy whisper. Will tomorrow hurt? Kai squeezed her hand gently. You'll be asleep, sweetheart, Mr. Lee added, and when you wake up, I'll be right here. Nina opened her eyes a little wider. Dad Lee, will you be okay? He smiled softly, something rare and tender. Yes, I'll be fine. Saving you is the easiest choice I've ever made. Nina nodded, reassured. Okay, then I'm not scared. She let out a small breath. Her eyes fluttered shut again. Within seconds, she was asleep. Both men sat quietly, letting the moments settle in their chests. After a long while, Kai spoke. You're donating your cells, and you're losing your position in the company. His voice was low. That's a lot to give up. Mr. Lee watched Nina's sleeping face, expression tender and firm at the same time. I'm not losing anything, he said. I'm finally getting something back. Kai absorbed that quietly, nodding. Mr. Lee continued, voice soft but unwavering. Money, status, I had all that, but I never had peace. Not really, not after losing her mother. Not after losing her. He looked at Kai, his eyes tired but clear. But now, I have a daughter again, and a second chance. That's more than I deserve, but I'm not wasting it. Kai exhaled a shaky breath. You're a good father, he murmured. Mr. Lee gave a weak smile. I'm trying. Kai nodded. We both are. A nurse poked her head in gently. Sorry to disturb, but visiting hours ended an hour ago. You both should try to rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. Kai looked at Mr. Lee. You go. I'll stay tonight. But Mr. Lee shook his head. We both stay, he said simply. Kai paused, then nodded. So the nurse brought 2 chairs, thin blankets, a thermos of warm water. The 2 men sat on either side of Nina, one dozing, one watching, then switching without a word. Through the long night, Nina slept peacefully, and her father stayed awake, watching over her, protecting her, hoping harder than they'd ever hoped in their lives. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight, they were a family. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, soft and golden, brushing over Nina's cheeks like a warm hand. She blinked awake slowly, her little fingers searching instinctively for the hands of the 2 men who had guarded her all night. Kai and Mr. Lee were both there, just like they promised. Kai sat leaning forward in a chair, elbows on his knees. Mr. Lee sat upright despite barely sleeping, his posture stubbornly steady, as if refusing to show weakness on the day his daughter needed him most. When Nina's fingers brushed his, Kai stirred. Morning, sweetheart, he whispered with a tired smile. Mr. Lee leaned closer. How are you feeling? Nina rubbed her eyes. A little shaky, she murmured, but I'm okay. Kai kissed her forehead. That's my girl. A nurse stepped into the room with gentle steps, holding a chart. Good morning, Nina. Today's the big day, she said softly. Nina nodded bravely. Her lips trembled, but she didn't let fear fully show. Kai squeezed her hand. We'll be right here, he said. Every second. Mr. Lee stepped closer. They're going to take me to a different room first, he explained gently, to collect the cells your body needs. Nina blinked, concerned. Does it hurt? Mr. Lee smiled. A little, but nothing I can't handle. She looked at him for a long moment, eyes serious and soft at once. You're saving me, she whispered. Mr. Lee's breath shook. You saved me first, he whispered back. A doctor entered with 2 nurses behind him. Mr. Lee, we're ready whenever you are, he said. Mr. Lee nodded, then knelt down beside Nina's bed. Hey, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. When you wake up from your procedure, I'll be right here, and so will your other dad. Nina bit her lip. Promise? He cupped her small cheek, voice trembling but firm. With all my heart, she reached out and hugged him. It was a weak hug, but Mr. Lee held her like she was made of pure light. Kai's eyes burned watching the moment. Nina then reached for Kai. Dad, Kai, hold me too. Kai gathered her gently, kissing the top of her head. You're my brave girl, he whispered. Dad's right here, always. When he pulled back, tears clung to his lashes. Nina lifted her tiny hand to wipe them. Don't cry, she said softly. You said I'm safe. Kai nodded, swallowing hard. You are. The nurses gently lowered Nina back to her pillows. The doctor nodded toward Mr. Lee. Sir, it's time. Mr. Lee straightened, took one last look at Nina and whispered, I'll bring back hope for you. Nina nodded bravely, clutching her drawing. My dad's, to her chest. Kai watched as Mr. Lee walked out with the medical team. The door closed softly behind them. Nina looked up at Kai. Dad, Kai, is he scared? Kai sat beside her and brushed her knuckles gently. He thought about Mr. Lee's trembling hand, the way he'd tried to hide it, his sleepless night, his fear of failing her again. Yes, Kai said honestly, but he's doing it anyway. Nina nodded sleepily. That makes him brave. Kai smiled through a tight throat. It does. A gentle nurse arrived to prepare Nina for her own procedure, explaining every step in soft words, checking her vitals, adjusting her blankets. Nina whispered to Kai, Will I see lots of white when I fall asleep? Kai kissed her small hand. Probably, he said. And when you wake up, it'll be a whole new start. Then I'm ready. Her voice shook, but her eyes held courage bigger than her whole childhood. As the team rolled Nina's bed toward the operating wing, Kai walked beside her, holding her hand the whole way. She whispered, Dad, Kai, will Dad Lee be okay? Yes, Kai said, squeezing her fingers. He'll be just fine. And will I be okay? Kai blinked fast, fighting tears. You're going to fight, he said, and we're going to fight with you. Nina let her eyes close. I'm glad I have two dads, she murmured. Kai bent down and pressed his forehead to hers. We're glad we have you. Then the doors of the operating room opened. Bright lights spilled out. The nurse gently guided Kai back. We'll take it from here, sir? Kai nodded, letting Nina's hand go slowly, painfully, like letting go of a piece of his soul. As the doors closed behind her, the echo rang through him. Don't give up. Don't let go. Not now. He stood there shaking, alone in the hallway, heart split between fear and hope. A moment later, Mr. Lee, pale, exhausted but steady, was wheeled out of his procedure room. He saw Kai. Kai saw him, and without speaking, they moved toward each other until they stood side by side, two fathers, waiting, praying, holding on to hope as tight as they held on to her. The waiting room outside the pediatric surgery wing was too bright, too still, and far too quiet for two fathers with their hearts on the operating table. Kai sat on the edge of a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly they began to shake. He kept imagining Nina's small fingers slipping from his hand as the doors closed. Kept hearing her little voice asking, "Will I be okay?" A few feet away, Mr. Lee sat in a wheelchair, a warm pack pressed to the crook of his arm where doctors had collected his stem cells. His face was pale, a thin line of sweat above his brow, but he refused to lean back. He refused to rest, because resting felt like abandoning her. Kai finally spoke, barely above a whisper. "You okay?" Mr. Lee nodded once. It wasn't convincing. Kai looked away. "You can sit back, he said gently. "The nurses said you should." Mr. Lee shook his head. "I'll sit when she wakes," he murmured. "Not before." Silence draped over them again, heavy, unforgiving. A nurse walked by with a clipboard, offering a sympathetic smile, but she didn't stop. She knew their tight fathers waiting for a child they couldn't protect with their own hands. Kai exhaled shakily. "This is the longest day of my life," he whispered. Mr. Lee nodded. "Mine too," he said, "and I've had some long ones." Kai glanced at him, surprised at the honesty. Mr. Lee stared at the floor, eyes distant. "You know," he said quietly, "when her mother left, I spent years angry, at her family, at the world, at myself." He swallowed. "I kept thinking the universe took my daughter from me as punishment." Kai listened, patient and steady. "But now," Mr. Lee said, voice thick, "I think the universe gave her a second life. With you. With someone who actually stayed. Someone who didn't let anger swallow him." Kai's throat tightened. "You think too highly of me," he said. "There were nights when I didn't know how to feed her. Nights when she had a fever, and I begged whoever's listening to keep her alive because I didn't have the money to take her to a doctor." He wiped his face roughly. "I felt like I was failing her." Mr. Lee looked at him, really looked. Kai continued softly, "But she always smiled, always made me believe I could do it another day." He nodded. "She's always been the strongest person in the room." Mr. Lee's voice cracked. "She gets that from her mother," he murmured. "Lien, she was the strongest person I ever knew." Kai nodded slowly, respectfully. "She talked about you, he said. Mr. Lee's breath caught. "Before she passed," Kai continued, "she told me you weren't the villain her family made you out to be. She said, she hoped you would find Nina someday." Mr. Lee closed his eyes, jaw trembling. "I should have found her sooner," he whispered. "I should have." Kai shook his head firmly. "No, don't do that. You're here now. That's what matters." Mr. Lee bowed his head, struggling to hold himself together. A doctor finally entered the waiting room holding a folder. Both men shot up. Kai almost tripping over his own feet, Mr. Lee pushing himself upright despite the nurse's protest behind him. The doctor approached with calm, steady steps. "How is she?" Kai blurted. "Is she awake?" Mr. Lee asked at the same time. The doctor held up a hand. "She came through the procedure," he said calmly. Kai gasped. "But," the doctor added carefully, "she's very weak. The next 24 hours are critical." Kai nodded rapidly. "Can we see her?" The doctor hesitated, then softened. "One at a time. She's still under sedation." Mr. Lee took a breath. "You go," he told Kai. "She'll want to hear your voice first." Kai looked torn. "But you, I'll see her after." Mr. Lee insisted gently. "You raised her? Go. She needs you." Kai didn't argue. He followed the doctor toward Nina's recovery room, heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear his own footsteps. Mr. Lee let himself lower into the chair he had refused all morning, exhaustion washing over him like a wave. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time since Nina entered that operating room, he whispered a prayer. Quiet, raw, desperate. "Please, don't take her from us." He pressed his palm to his eyes. "Let her stay. Let me have this one chance to be her father." The hallway echoed softly with distant beeps, footsteps, and low murmurs. Somewhere beyond the door, Nina fought for her life. And her two fathers waited, One by her bedside, one in the hallway, both broken, both hopeful, both holding on to the same whispered truth.